in my sister's room because her room has better lighting and it's a little bit more clean than mine, maybe, but you didn't have to know that, okay? Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Haley Cordova if you're curious, and I wanted to do a whole video today on just how I grew my glutes. Honestly, half because I just got my hair done and I really want a reason to make a YouTube. Hey, I already went to the gym this morning, so I don't have anywhere else to go. So I'm gonna go online, okay? And it looks really good, and you knew that. Anyways, that's besides the point, okay? There's a lot of information out there, and I know that growing your glutes is a very common goal that a lot of people have. That's the reason that I honestly started taking the gym so seriously. So I think it can be very valuable to have all your information kind of consolidated into one video. So grab some popcorn. I don't know how long this is gonna be. If it's me in the video, it's gonna be 10 hours long, but I'm never shutting up. Somebody mute her mic, seriously, and it's okay. Kind of just an overall rundown of how to grow your glutes, how I grew my glutes, and just some tips that I wish I knew starting off, and things that if I could change, I would, and it would have saved me a lot of time. So let's hop on into it, okay? Starting off, before we even get to the muscle part, if you want to grow muscle, we're gonna work chronologically. You gotta grow first, and you need food to do that, okay? And this is where it gets rocky because I heard that you need to eat a lot to grow muscle early on in my fitness journey. And the soccer track athlete in me was like, I can eat. So I was just eating what? Garbage. I associated growing muscle with just eating everything in sight and then going to the gym 5 times a week. And while that might be a method that can give you some growth, that's not always the best way to do it. And there is definitely a method to how to do it in ways that can minimize your fat gain. And it's not to say that you won't gain fat, because you will. It's part of gaining weight. But to minimize your fat gain, your nutrition is really, really important, and the high quality food is really, really important. So when people say you need to eat a lot to grow muscle, what they're referring to is a caloric surplus. And basically all this means is that there's a certain number, whether you're aware of it or not, your body keeps track of it, whether or not you would like to admit that you sit at. So if you were to do just your day-to-day activity, there's a certain amount calorically that your body needs to just be a functioning, whatever that was, a functioning human being, right? A really good way to find out what this number is if you look up TDEE calculator online. Now this number is not Bible, this is not a complete exact down to the single gram of peanut butter that you need, okay? It's just a framework, and this can give you a really good idea of where you just sit, so you have an idea of how much you need to eat in order to put on mass. One thing that I will recommend, if you're going to use the TDEE calculator, please be realistic when you put in your information, because there will be a little section where it says that if you're lightly active, very active, sedentary, whatever. Back when I look back 2, 3, 4 years ago, I was not really going hard in the gym at all, but I put that my activity was really, really high because I was basing it off of frequency and not intensity. Make sure you're really being honest with yourself when you set that number, and it will generate just a basic idea of where your body sits at. And from there, you have more of a clear guideline in how much you need to eat in order to grow. So after putting in that information, let's just say I'm gonna be using the numbers 2,000 because it's just a really easy number to use. Okay, sorry. So 1 pound of fat is 3,500 calories. And the reason that this can be beneficial is because if you're looking to gain muscle, you need to be eating in a surplus so that your body has energy to create muscle. Think about how cool it is, grand scheme, that your body's quite literally Bob the Builder building things. It needs supplies. It needs lumber, okay? I know that there's like deforestation issues right now, but you gotta give it something. Maybe that's in the form of potatoes, okay? But you need to make sure that you're prioritizing your nutrition and eating enough so that your body can literally build you what you want. So that number 3,500 is very significant to understand, because if we were to want to gain, let's say 1 pound a week, if you divide that by 7 days in a week, that's 500 calories, right? So 35 divided by 7 is 500. And this is where you get that number of how much more a day you need to be eating. So what I mean by that is, if my maintenance calories, meaning that if I were to keep the same that I'm doing every single day, was 2,000 calories, if I were to put on a pound of mass a week, I would need to be eating at least 23 to 2,500, because that would give me 300 to 500 calories extra every single day, which adds up to 3,500, which adds up to a pound of mass a week. In terms of what's muscle, that's where the quality of your nutrition matters a lot. Everybody barks at you at protein. A good kind of guideline with protein is a pound per body weight, or if you are a little bit more overweight, goal body weight. That again is not Bible. Some people, depending on how big you are, don't need that much protein, okay? But that's a good idea of just getting familiar with prioritizing it. For me, if I'm just being honest right now, I'm eating well over my body weight right now. Eating your protein is kind of that building block in building your muscles back up after you diminish them in the gym. For terms like lean and dirty bulking, all that means is some people just stick to that 300 to 500 calorie window and going into a surplus, but some people just say fuck it and do what I did years ago and just eat whatever the hell they want and train and just kind of cross their fingers. You can do either. I mean, there are quite literally no laws in regards to that. For me personally, I feel the best, and my transition into cutting season and losing some fat is a lot easier when I just stick to a smaller surplus. So right now, for example, I don't share my personal calories, but I am in a 500 calorie surplus, meaning that I'm putting on mass. I'm eating 500 calories more than my maintenance every single day in turns, and at a week glance, I'm gaining weight every single week. You don't have to track to have an idea of this. If you are looking to eat in a surplus, there are some swaps that you can make that can really help get you there without having to be so aware of it all the time, because tracking can be a double-edged sword for some people, which is totally understandable. Out of the 3 macronutrients, protein, carbs, and fats are the most dense, meaning that 1 gram of protein is 4 calories, 1 gram of carbs is 4 calories, but 1 gram of fat is 9 calories. So if you're somebody who's looking to put on some size, but you don't want to track your food, implementing more fats just kind of simultaneously increases your caloric intake without you having to be super aware of it. So things like peanut butter, fattier cuts of meat, so maybe like an 85-15, or salmon, bison, things like that. Egg yolks, whole fat dairy, cheeses, things like that, all can be really helpful in increasing your calories without necessarily being a lot of food. Little snacks like nuts, dried fruit, it's not a fat, but it is very caloric. Little swaps like that can be helpful in just making sure that you're eating enough to put on size. I eat peanut butter quite literally every single day. It's one of the easiest ways, in my opinion, to increase your food, or just regular butter, oil, things like that. It's not gonna take up that much room in your stomach, so it's not gonna be uncomfortable and feel like you're eating a bunch of food, but it still will yield you more calories, which can help you put on size. We have a guest. Hello, Kubi, come here. Speaking of putting on size, please, Luna wants to say hi. Say hi, Kubi. She actually hates me, but Queen is bulking right now. Anyways, so that's just a basic idea in terms of growth of what you need to be eating. Now keep in mind, something that I wish that I understood was you have to be consistent with your diet the same exact way you're consistent with your training, and I neglected that for so fucking long because I would only feel comfortable eating enough on days that my glutes were sore. That's not how you grow muscle. Your body needs consistency. If you're somebody who's bulking half the week and then cutting the rest of the week, your body quite literally doesn't know what the fuck you're doing. It doesn't know how to respond to that. So you have unrealistic expectations if you're expecting to grow muscle when you're only eating to grow muscle 4 days a week. You really have to sit down and be honest with yourself. And I know, especially from my female perspective, it can be uncomfortable eating a lot of food. I out-eat my dad usually, and that's just kind of how it is. But I find a lot of fun in knowing that I'm getting stronger and feeling my best and things like that every single week. Just embrace the uncomfort part of it. It's really not that bad, and honestly, once you're so goal-oriented, you won't really care that much about what it takes to get there. And gaining weight is a process, and if you are prioritizing your nutrition in a way that is substantial and also just quality focused in addition to your training, I promise you the weight that you gain will not go in any direction that you might think. And that's not to put a negative connotation around weight gain or fat gain or anything like that, because fat gain is part of it, okay? But just in terms of capitalizing what is muscle versus fat, I promise you committing to your bulk will be one of the best decisions that you ever did. And I wasted so much time retrospectively eating a lot sometimes, and then I would like forget about it, and then I'd feel really sore, so I'd feel okay with it. You have to feel okay with it no matter what the fuck your body feels like and no matter what your emotions tell you, okay? It's just the reality of it. You get out what you put in, so the more that you really commit to your eating and your training, the more muscle you're going to build, but your body needs to know what the fuck you're doing. And you're confusing it with so much peace and love when you wake up at noon, have Taco Bell, and then go back to bed. You're like, what are we doing here? You have to be consistent with it and just trust that your body will know what to do with the energy that it gives you, because I promise you, you probably need a lot more than you think to grow muscle. And although like I said, it is a little bit uncomfortable eating a lot of food or feeling really full, it's just a part of the process. If you want an ass, the way that I view it is a little bit extreme, but if I want an ass, feeling bloated in the process doesn't matter to me because my goal is set. And I got very, very honed in on that, and that really helped me in times where maybe I'm going to bed and I feel like I just ate so much food. My goals don't give a fuck how I feel, okay? So if I want a butt, whether or not I'm gonna be uncomfortable in the process doesn't change that end goal. So really just stay focused, put your horse blinders on, okay, Seabiscuit, and really just stay true to that, and you will see results if you stick to it and give yourself time to see results, consistent time at that. So now we can work into the workouts and kind of how I structure my workouts and the way that I would advise somebody to do that as well. So in terms of how frequently a week, I personally hit legs about 2 times a week. Some people recover really, really well and they can do 3, but that again depends on your recovery. One thing that I also regret doing is I overtrained. I thought that if I wanted more butt, I need to train my legs every single day. But the gym is where you're breaking down your muscles and you need to give time for your muscles to grow back so that you can break them down again and grow them back stronger. It's kind of like an inchworm effect. And if you're hitting legs every single day, there's no time to rebuild your muscles. So yeah, you might be breaking them down, but if anything, you're just breaking down your muscle and it's gonna get smaller and not gonna go in the way that you would like it to. So I choose 2 leg days a week, and that's because with everything else, it just allows me proper rest time. I'm able to prioritize other parts of my body and other ways of exercise like my cardio and things like that while still recovering and feeling really, really strong on those designated glute days. In terms of how I structure my workouts, so I pick movements, and this is where a lot of people overcomplicate it, okay? If you can do 6 to 7 exercises on your glute days, you are not training hard enough, okay? I was doing 80 different things and then wondering why I wasn't seeing results. If you're not struggling with 4 to 5, then that's a sign, that is reflective of your effort, okay? So I pick about 4 to 5 movements. I do 2 to 3 really main compound movements, which I'll explain, and then a few accessory, and that's it. And if you're really pushing yourself, truly, that will be plenty, okay? I know some people in bodybuilding, it's like they only do like 2 to 3 exercises, but they're bringing those exercises to true failure. For what the actual workouts are themselves, I stick to my movements, and that's how I formulate my split, really. So I'm focusing on just my glute days, but I keep this same formula, if you will, for my other days. I just pick a few movements, working each part of my muscle, if you will, and I push that shit to failure. And that's been the easiest and fastest and most effective way for me to see growth personally. It again is one of those things where it's like intensity over frequency is always, always, always gonna win there. A term that you hear very frequently is progressive overload, and that is how you grow muscle. I mean, if we're dumbing down a scientific process to a few words, progressive overload is the key there. And basically a way that might help you understand what that means if you don't know. So like I had mentioned, when you're at the gym, you're breaking down your muscles, right? So if you picture your muscles, if you will, like a plyboard at Home Depot, okay? Cue the soundtrack. When we're at the gym, we're breaking it down. We're using those weights to break our muscles down because after the gym, fingers crossed, we're eating enough to grow it back, right? But when your body is being broken down that way, it eventually is going to learn to resist that stimulus that you're putting it against. So when I'm, for example, squatting, if my body knows that every single week, twice a week, I'm squatting 100 pounds, over time, it's going to grow resistant of that, and it's going to be able to expect that, if you will. So to make sure that I'm progressing and getting stronger and growing my muscle back stronger, eventually that 100 pounds is not going to be as damaging, if you will, to the muscle, because your body wants to maintain homeostasis. It wants to be okay. We all just want to be okay. So it's with time going to resist that. Not resist it in the sense that it won't break down your muscles, but it's going to get strong enough to where that 100 pounds it's not going to do the same amount of damage as it did months back. So all progressive overload really is increasing your weight or increasing your sets, doing something to make it harder so that your body, as it grows resistant to your training, can push back and you can continue to grow. So the best way that I found to kind of calculate if you're progressively overloading is, let's just say 1 week you squat 100 pounds for 6 reps, okay? And that 6th rep is really, really challenging. I would keep that weight for the next few weeks. But after a few weeks, maybe you notice that 100 pounds is not that challenging anymore and you can do 6 reps very, very easily. That's your sign that you can increase your weight. So maybe trying 120 pounds for that same 6 reps. If your final reps are not challenging, that's a true sign that you can increase your weight. And that's kind of just the basis of how I did it. If I'm being honest, the way that I train currently is I don't even count my reps, I just go to failure. I understand that's probably not the right answer for a lot of people and that might not be something that's applicable to everybody, but for me, I find really fucking heavy weights and I go until I literally can't go anymore, and that's the easiest sign for me when I mechanically cannot move the weight that I have fatigued my muscle to its absolute biggest ability. So something to keep in mind with progressive overload is the type of exercises that you are picking, and this is where a lot of people are going to kind of zone out and not want to listen to me, and that's okay. I'm just sharing the truth. Take it or leave it, okay? Tarot cards, like, take it if it resonates, leave it if it doesn't. But if you are switching up your exercises every single week, you are not going to see the growth that you could. And that is because if your body is not receiving the same stimulus, how do you expect it to know how to grow past that, if that makes sense? If I'm constantly doing something different, my body doesn't even know what it's building against. It's like going into a boxing ring with a mask on, okay? You don't even know who you fighting. You don't even know who you're fighting. That was a Jenna Marbles reference. If you get that, you're real. So how can you expect your muscles to build properly back if you're not keeping the same exact thing and going heavier every single week? A harsh reality of it is I keep the same exact exercises and I've been doing the same exact leg day for years. I switch it up sometimes, and you can do that, but in terms of what the actual movements are themselves, it's relatively the same, and that's because my body can progress the most if it knows. Think about it this way. If your body's that plyboard and it's getting hit in the same exact specific way every single week, heavier and heavier, it's much more likely to grow back from that exact stimulus versus if I'm changing it up all the week. How can it grow back consistently if my workouts are not consistent? And I don't mean that in just going 2 times a week, but in the actual workouts that you're doing, you know? So this is where I can get more specific into what my leg days actually look like. So there are 3 muscles on your glutes, okay? There's the gluteus maximus, the gluteus minimus, and the gluteus medius. And for that bubble butt effect, your maximus and your medius are usually the ones that are worked the most, okay? Picking at least one movement for each of those things can help you really capitalize off of your glute gains, if you will. I focus most of mine on my compound movements. So in general, all leg day movements can be categorized roughly, this is very general, as some kind of squatting movement, a thrusting movement, like a hip hinge movement, and some kind of unilateral movement. This is the formula for how I structure every single leg day that I've ever done, ever. I do a thrusting, something with a thrust in it. Okay, these hips can't lie. I do something with some kind of squatting or, you know, pressing movement. I do some kind of unilateral movement, and I do some kind of like isolation, really fatiguing the muscle. Keep in mind, like I said, that's not that many things. Each of those exercises, I am going to failure in. I am pushing that hard as hell so that every single avenue of my glute is getting killed, bam, 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 in each of my exercises. So some examples of workouts that train your glute maximus are things like step-ups, hip thrusts are my favorite ones there. Things like that are really gonna get that majority of your glute max, which is the maximum of what your glute is kind of like that bubble butt appearance, if you will. I start with what will yield me the most growth so that I can really make sure that I'm fatiguing myself as hard as I can in those movements. So I start pretty much all of my leg days off with my hip thrust. These have been known to yield the most growth in terms of glutes. So I'll warm up with a immediate set just to kind of get the idea for it, but then I'll do 3 to 4 working sets, pushing all of those to failure. The weights, honestly, if I were to share like what my weights are, that doesn't really matter because everybody's different and has different starting points. But typically, if you would like an idea, I usually warm up with like 3 plates, and then I do a set at 4, a set at 5, a set at 6 to complete failure, and then maybe I'll drop it and just go with like 2 until I quite literally can't move the weight anymore. And when I leave my hip thrust machine, I know that I have fatigued my glute max to her biggest capability, and we're burning, okay? And that's just one exercise. But bringing that one exercise to true intensity has been one of the most helpful ways in helping me grow. As much as that it might suck sometimes, and it is a hard thing to do a lot of the times, I promise you, if you really put forth your intensity, you will see results, but you have to be honest with how hard you're pushing it. So I always start with hip thrust, and then I move into some kind of maybe like hip hinging or squatting movement. That's usually something like leg press. I'll do RDLs. So I'm still hinging my hips back for my RDLs, and for my leg press, that's that pressing movement I was talking about. Sometimes if I want more of a quad dominant day, I'll do like squatting or something like that. Leg press, you can bias it with your glutes. I like leg press a lot because it's very versatile. If you want to work your quads, you can do a more narrow and close together stance, but for glute focus, doing a high and wide, I can really kill my glutes there, and it hurts so bad, but it feels so good. So I'll usually move from my hip thrust to something like a leg press, and then from there I'll pick a unilateral movement. Usually it's something like Bulgarian split squats or reverse lunges where you're just working on one leg. So you could do step ups, anything where you're really just focusing on that lunge or moving backwards. Some kind of lunge variant is always really important in my glute days. So that's either a Bulgarian split squat, a reverse lunge, a step up, something like that. Sometimes I'll even just do single leg press, and that's really fun too. But something where I'm working one leg at a time in that lunge kind of range of motion. And in regards to the glute medius, I'll do abductors sometimes, or I'll do kickbacks or something like that, but honestly, I don't train my medius that much. I probably should. It's a pretty small muscle, but it's still important to incorporate, so of course do not neglect that. Things like abductors, like kickbacks, it gets trained in other movements as well. You don't necessarily need to isolate it, but those are some movements that I do like throwing in there at times. But just keeping 4 to 5 things and just going really fucking hard. I have 7%. Okay, I just checked my camera battery. I have 7%, so we're gonna speed round this shit, all right? So all my leg days pretty much look like hip thrusting, leg press, maybe an RDL, some kind of split squat or lunge, and then some kind of isolation. Maybe it's doing hyperextensions where I'm really squeezing my glutes at the top, or doing step-ups or abductors, something like that. But taking all of those to failure. How many sets I do kind of varies depending on my mood. But usually it's like 3 to 4 sets of really pushing that weight until I mechanically cannot move anymore. And I know then that I have given myself an honest effort in fatiguing my muscle as much as I can, so that when I go home and eat consistently, just like I've been working out consistently, I will grow. I will yield myself a peach. Some things that I wish that I knew is you don't need to activate your muscles. I wasted a lot of time doing these weird band exercises because I thought you had to wake up your muscles. That's not real. Your muscles don't get awoken. They work or they don't. They're activated or they're not, okay? You don't need to, you can warm up for sure. I do leg raises and things just to kind of get focused and loosen up a little bit, but in terms of you won't grow glutes if you don't activate, that's not true. You don't need to do these clamshell with the booty bands at all. You don't need to be doing kickbacks on the Stairmaster. You're not going to be able to progressively overload there if you're just doing body weight shit. It's really hard, at least, to progressively overload unless you're doing a lot of reps. Because think about it, if you're doing 20 clamshells and it hurts, you're gonna have to do 30 clamshells to make it hurt the same way in a month. And I don't know how many clamshells you can do in a year's time. Weights are just the easiest way. So body weight exercises, while they can still be helpful, and I'm pro movement, so I'm not gonna say that you can't do that, but I just found that using weights is the easiest way to really make sure that you're keeping that same intensity and increasing every single week. In terms of cardio, there's this stigma that you can't grow muscle and do cardio at the same time, or that like running kills your gains. That's literally not true. Running is great, and I'm a huge advocate for cardio. I take 1 spin class a week, and I go on daily walks just getting my steps in. That's really, really helpful in your metabolization and your digestion and your mood and all of it. And especially if you are somebody who views your year in cutting and bulking phases, while you don't have to do that, implementing cardio even in your surplus stages makes that transitional period feel a lot easier, because all you change is really your intensity in your cardio sessions. Stop neglecting cardio. You can do both. Just don't overdo it in terms of like running 25 miles and then not eating. You have to stay consistent with that surplus, but just don't be afraid of doing cardio either. To sum everything up, as long as you're eating quality foods, lots of protein with adequate carbs and fats to make sure that you're feeling satiated, feeling super energized. My last little thing is really important, and that is your sleep and rest. Make sure that if you are training your glutes with that high intensity, that you are resting accordingly, getting 8 to 9 hours of sleep, you're drinking your water, and you're spacing out your workouts enough to where you can go into your next leg day and feel ready to do so. If you're hitting it every other day or something like that, you're probably not giving your body enough time to grow, and if you're training hard enough, you won't be able to do that. So maybe that's a little indicator of what your training style is. But if I had to kind of sum everything up in just one big thing, it's stick to the same shit. It's probably gonna feel boring, but boring is what gets you results. One of my really good mutuals on here, Michael from Higher Up Wellness, he says it's simple, but it's not easy, or it's easy, but it's complicated. It's not complicated, but it is simple. Shout out Michael from Higher Up Wellness. He's one of my really good mutuals on here. He says that all the time, and it's so true. Stick to the same workouts. Focus on going really, really fucking hard. Eating really, really fucking hard consistently. Get your sleep, and you'll be fine. And give it time, okay? I would say if you're gonna commit to a bulk or commit to a surplus, give yourself at least 3 or 4 months to do so. It takes a long time to build muscle, so if you just try to eat and grow muscle for like a month, you're not gonna see results. So be realistic with it. It takes a lot of time, and my physique, while I have grown a lot of muscle in my time, there are 4 years in between these pictures. So trust the process. Don't listen to everything you see on social media. Look up the science. I encourage you to always get educated, because that can be your tool in staying focused and staying aligned with your goals, and go fucking kill it. And quit asking yourself how you feel about what you do, because your goals don't give a fuck how you feel. If you feel bloated, if you feel tired, if you feel like you can't do it, you can't do another rep, yes you can. A motto that I like to use on my leg days is go until you can't go no mo, and then do 3 more reps. You are a lot stronger than you think you are. I have 1%, so I hope that this video kind of helps you and getting more of a clear idea. Thank you so much for watching. I love you so, so much. Yeah, good luck and go get big.